All right. Well, thanks guys for joining today. So to start off, I wanted to see if we could each share a little bit about background and why you decided to get into planned giving and working with charitable causes in the first place. Maybe we could start with Brian and then John and then I'll go.
Okay. So this is actually my third career. Started off at 18, trying to get out of New York City, joined the Navy, did 20 years, became a computer geek while I was in, taught myself how to be a programmer, did that for a while, and then I wasn't happy doing it anymore. So I decided to figure out, what am I going to do with my life now, at almost 50, right? So I decided I need to find something that I could feel happy about every day when I woke up in the morning. And people think I'm crazy, but I decided to be a financial advisor because I get to help people every day. And somebody's better off because they talk to me, which is a great way to wake up and a great way to go to bed at night. And then I had clients that were interested in donating to charity, and ways of giving more than what they had available at the time. So I started doing some investigating on the planned giving and found there are so many ways to do it. And it made me happy to be able to help the people, to help the charities. I love it.
Awesome. Jonathan, tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So I really got into charitable planning after realizing that I could have much more impact in the world, helping people give away their money. And I was very surprised to find out that people do love to give money to their favorite causes, and it's something that they think about. And the fact that there's so many terrific strategies out there that can be hugely impactful if people are just even a little bit charitably inclined in their life. They can leave a tremendous legacy for their favorite charity. They can leave, even potentially leave more to their children. Some of the planning strategies can do both, and it's tremendous. But I really, I have always cared about important causes. I've always been a sensitive soul. When my parents divorced, I wanted to help my mom at 12 years old. So she used to clean houses. So I would go with her and clean houses, help her, pay the bills. And then I joined the military, and I wanted to serve people, and I wanted to serve my country. And then I ended up in Iraq. And for a sensitive soul, spending 5 years in Iraq and 1 year in Afghanistan actually took a toll on me psychologically, on my heart and my spirit. And I was doing great work over there with orphans. I started an organization called Orphans of War, serving multitude of thousands of orphans and widows in Iraq over the course of 14 years. I just kind of got burned out, just psychologically wrecked. But I wanted to still be able to help, right? And help people be charitable, like I said. And eventually, as I'm successful in this business, I'm also able to continue to help those kids over there. And the best way to do that was to learn some financial planning strategies and those charitable planning strategies. And I got to tell you, when I met Brian, we were both working at Wells Fargo. And I was at the point in my life where I was just on the verge of a really heavy, what I refer to as crash. I felt like I fell off a cliff psychologically. And Brian really lifted my spirit, because Brian reminded me, in his vision and his passion for charitable planning, Brian reminded me that there's still stuff that I could do. Maybe I couldn't be in Iraq anymore because it was too dangerous helping orphans, but I could do something. And that's one of Brian's mottos. Everybody can do something, right? Let's all do something. And so Brian's very much a mentor, but he motivates me. it keeps me motivated and moving in the right direction to reach these very successful people and their families, to help them leave a legacy, and for first generation people to teach their children about how important it is to leave a legacy, and connecting first generation with second generation and their passions. It's really important to be able to do that.
Awesome. I've always had the desire to make a difference in the world and do something for the good of others, and to leave a mark when I'm gone. Early on, I've had the opportunity to serve multiple capacities. Served a religious mission for 2 years. Served with a lot of profit organizations, community organizations. I've done a lot of work with the immigrant community in particular. And one of the things that just keeps coming up regularly is that there's opportunities that regular people want to be involved with, big things, and to make a difference, and to give back. And sometimes we don't know how to do it. And so when I became an estate planner in the kind of estate planning space, having conversations with, and first of all, I wasn't planning on getting into estate planning. I was planning on being a prosecutor. And then I got disillusioned with kind of that side of the legal industry. But what I found was that when I sat down with clients, every situation was different, and every legacy and the purposes that people have of what they want to accomplish when they're gone is so unique. And I found it a very fulfilling process. But I also found that as I had conversations, that a lot of times individuals, families didn't have a specific desire of what they wanted to do with their estate. They hadn't thought it through well enough. And it's so fun to have conversations where you can help people uncover purpose and help them to uncover potential opportunities that they can do with their wealth or with their assets that they had no idea was even possible. We've had conversations where at the end of the conversation, the client wonders, well, how did we do this? You tripled the value of my asset. How did we do that? Or they're amazed by the amount of good that they can perpetuate from generation to generation simply by putting rules and guidelines around the assets that they want to leave. And so I think it's very fulfilling to see, even an individual with a modest estate being able to leave ripples that continue far, long after they're gone. And I've seen it in my life, just in the legacies and stories that have been left to me of people who have passed on, and being able to reflect and learn from their life and life lessons, but also in being able to help my clients to do the same, and just seeing the lives that it touches.
Yes, it's really good.
So when it comes to planned giving, what's your favorite part, Brian, when you sit down with clients and you have a conversation? When do you know that they understand the purpose for the conversation?
So for me, it starts out, I usually get introduced to them by someone who's part of the organization, or I've met the executive director. And it starts off with the same 3 questions every time. Jonathan, you'll have to forgive me because you've heard this numerous times. So the first one is, you have people that have donated to you every year for at least 5 years, even small donations, doesn't matter the size, because it means they're loyal to you, right? And they nod their head, yes, we have some of those people. And then the next question is, do you think those people would give more now if they knew it didn't involve pulling out their wallet or their checkbook? And the answer is usually yes to that. And then the last question is, do you think those people would give more now if they knew that it wouldn't have any kind of negative impact on the legacy they want to leave to their family? And, the answer is yes, they're still nodding. And then I tell them that, according to the Federal Reserve, only 1% of wealth in the US is kept in cash. So guess where the rest of it is? And you have access to that. You just have to know how to ask for it. And then I see the light bulb go off. And then we need to talk about this some more. You need to come talk to our board and, explain all this. And I start with the simple things. Qualified charitable distribution, appreciated assets. Those are easy to explain, easy to implement, especially for organizations just getting started, you know. And then we get into the more complicated stuff. But that's really it. That's when I see the light bulb go off. When they answer those questions and I tell them that there's this vast amount of wealth that no one's talking to people about.
So you said less than 1% of wealth is held in cash, but the majority of donations that organizations receive are all cash donations. Is that right?
80% of giving is done in cash. So everybody wants the dollar that's in your pocket right now. Right? Every organization wants it. They can't all have it. Even if you slice it up very thinly, they still can't all have it. They just need to know there are different ways.
So Jonathan, when you sit down with a family, you have a conversation about planned giving and strategies that they can maybe give assets that they didn't think about giving before, whether that's highly appreciated, stock, or maybe it's a residence or real estate that they're going to leave after their passing, right? They retain a life
interest. Yeah.
And you have that conversation. At what point do you know that they understand, the strategy, and the light bulb goes off for them personally, of the benefits and the good that it's going to do?
Right. So most clients already have something they're passionate about. Right? They already know the cause they're passionate about. Maybe they're giving money to that cause, or they thought at some point, hey, I'd like to give money to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. So they already have something in mind. So I asked that first question of, are you charitable now? And have you ever thought about giving money to your favorite charity, your favorite organization? And they love the question. They love the question because the answer is always yes. And then you get to hear about what they're passionate about. Yes. I'd love to give money to A, B, C, and D. And I'm passionate about that because of A, B, C, and D. And so what's great when you have a family in the room and you have that family dynamic happening, now you might have husband look over at the wife like, I never knew that, right? And then you ask the children, same questions. Anything you care about? And the children might breathe into that process like, yes, I'm actually passionate about this. And you might have dad who's been wanting the son to take over the business. And it's kind of been a struggle for them to get that to happen. He looks at the son and he's like, I didn't know you were passionate about that, right? So you get into the family dynamic, you understand what everybody's passionate about, and we can plan around that information. We can plan around that. If I know what you're passionate about and what you care about, we can plan around that. And we can help you give money to those favorite organizations. Maybe your child's not running your business, but maybe he's running a foundation for your entire family. It's something you agree upon that you guys want to do together as a family, bringing that family together in a united mission, something they can do together using the wealth that mom and dad built in the business. That's a win, right? And it doesn't matter the strategy. There's so many strategies out there that can help, but we can't help give you a strategy unless we absolutely know what you're passionate about. And so we need our families, our clients to be vulnerable. We need you to be vulnerable and share. We need you to be authentic and tell us what you're really passionate about and be vulnerable and share that. We can build something around that. So strategies don't matter. There's so many of them. Brian's got like 20 strategies he knows. I know 5 more. Glenn's got a bunch of strategies. We're going to figure out the right strategy, but we need you to tell us what you're passionate about.
Perfect. I remember a story. We sat down with the family, did their estate plan, and there was some charitable giving that we got into, but they told me a story of something they had done for Christmas, and I never heard anything like it. And it was the first time I really got introduced to the concept that even the average family can make a big difference in the world.
Yes.
What it was, mom and dad decided one Christmas, instead of giving presents, they were going to give each child $100. And they said, with this $100, you have to decide, some charitable gift, some purpose that you want to do and perpetuate some good out there. And so there's 3 kids. One of them decides that, they're going to buy some gifts and they're going to give it to a neighbor who's in need, right? One of them decides that they want to donate it to a local pet shelter and be able to help with, being able to provide for pets that are abandoned. And the third one wants to help children who were at the children's hospital, but he says $100 isn't enough. And so he goes and spends that $100 to get equipment to be able to start a lemonade stand, right? And so he starts selling lemonade and raises more money. The neighbors find out what he's doing. Some people start donating. And next thing you know, he's raised $10,000.
Yes.
And they partner with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and they go out and bless the lives of, I don't know how many people were in the hospital, but I mean, this is a kid who was just learning the joy of giving and being part of that process. With $100, I mean, nobody's going to be able to change the world just with $100, but the intention behind it is what's really powerful, because you can do a lot if you have the right intentions. And I think one of the things that a lot of families overlook is that they imagine that they have to have so much left over or so much extra before they can start giving. And the reality is that you need to have the desire and the spirit of giving from the beginning, and then the way opens up before you, right? And so it's interesting, because I've seen a lot of situations where we can take a modest estate and really do a lot of good. In fact, I have a great uncle and a great aunt. They were great, uncles and aunts, but they were also my great uncle and great aunt. And they didn't have any children, and they didn't plan to leave their estate to anybody. But, and neither one of them earned a very large income throughout their life. They had modest salaries. But as they grew their wealth, they set aside a portion of it to be able to purchase annuities, which then funded life insurance policies, which were intended to be left to their church. When they passed away, they left over $15 million to their church, right? That's what was important to them. And who would imagine that you could, with a modest salary, be able to leave that much of a legacy? But again, it comes down to what you value and what you want to, the intention behind what you want to accomplish as part of your estate and part of your planning. And so I just see that over and over again. And I think there's a tremendous purpose and fulfillment for those who are part of the giving process, and for us to be part of that process with them.
And there's a major misconception about who actually gives. People think the wealthy give, right? And they do. They're in a position to give now while they're still alive. But the majority of planned gifts are bequests. And the majority of bequests are from middle-class families. And the reason for that is they're raising their kids, they're putting their kids through college, they're setting aside money for their grandkids to go to school, they paid off their house, maybe they paid off their rental, or they've got a boat to go fishing on. So they give, but they don't have a whole lot of disposable income while they're going along to give. So they leave, 5, 10, 20, sometimes all of their estate to their favorite charity. And it can be pretty large if they've made, some good decisions, done some planning, like buying some life insurance, to leave to the favorite charity. Sometimes, it's $500,000, it's $1 million. That adds up, because over 2,000 people every day die in this country, unfortunately. But some of those people are leaving bequests to their favorite organization. So I work with some organizations here, and they were saying we're gonna pay special attention. Their goal was to get 100 new bequests this year. We're gonna pay special attention to our wealthiest donors. I said, well, you know what? Don't leave them out, but you want to talk to all your donors. You want to let all your donors know that there's a way to do this, and you'll be shocked by how many people of modest means say, well, I can leave 10% of my insurance policy. My family won't miss 10%, 5%. So that's the misconception. That's another one that needs to be overcome.
There's a lot of benefits beyond just the giving process for tax purposes and just, to be able to perpetuate good in society. Our country was founded on the principle of giving, and the charitable sector of the United States, I think, probably pulls more than its fair share of of the need that's out there. But John, is there anything that you want to share in regards to maybe some of the tax benefits of planned giving?
Yeah. So, United States, we were founded. So way back in the day, the first organizations that were tax exempt in this country were churches. First organizations that were tax exempt were churches. And one of the reasons that churches were tax exempt is they were universally known as being very charitable. They'd help the poor. They'd help lift people out of poverty. They, feed people, give people housing, right? So very important. And that's, and there was actually an argument in New York when they were first starting to decide. So the only church that actually had tax exempt status was, guess which one? The Anglican Church, because we were all still colonies of the British, right? And then the other churches rose up, the Dutch church rose up, and other churches rose up, say, wait, we want this tax exempt status as well. So anyways, that's a long story. But there is alignment. There is alignment with government tax law and charitable giving. And what I mean by that is the government is okay with you being charitable. In fact, they encourage charitable giving. And that's why there's so many terrific tax breaks. So there's very rarely alignment amongst business owners and the IRS, but here we have alignment, and it's a rare space, right? So let's not forget that. So I say to clients oftentimes, and it's not one-to-one, but basically the IRS gives you a choice. You give money to charity, or you can pay your taxes. You can make the choice, right? And there's strategic planning strategies that we can bring in to help you be able to make more of those choices about where your dollars actually go to. And I have clients say, I don't want to fund another war ever again. And I say, well, you're still going to have to pay taxes, but you can pay significantly less, and we can give more money to the favorite cause that you want to give money to. That's hugely impactful. And clients like, I can do that. I'm like, yes, you can do that, right? We have to be strategic. We have to understand what you're passionate about, and we can build something around that. Again, we don't want the tax tail to wag or the tax dog to, what is it? What am I saying? The charitable tail to wag the tax dog. I got that all wrong. But yeah, we don't want the charitable tail to wag the tax dog, right? So we're not giving just to avoid taxes, but there's some very good strategies you can use to reduce your taxes and give more to charity and give more to your family. There are terrific strategies out there. So my clients, I was just working with a client several weeks ago. It's about a $50 million estate that they're working with, growing rapidly. They currently aren't really giving money to any charity. But I asked that question. Have you ever been charitable? Have you ever given money to any organization? And the wife immediately responded, St. Jude's Children's Hospital is where I want to give money to. And the husband did that. He looked at her and he said, really? I didn't know that. Now we're designing and building a charitable strategy for them to give a bunch of money to St. Jude's Children's Hospital, but also leave just as much, if not more money to their children. Because of the tax advantages in the strategy and the way we've structured it, they can do both. Millions of dollars to children, St. Jude's Children's Hospital, and more money to their children. And those strategies are out there. We just need to know some details so we can get that strategy in place. And there's many more situations like that. I have another client, Glenn, that they have no children. They're not going to give their estate to anybody in their extended family. So that means they're giving all of their money away. And the price tag on that right now is about $45 million. Right, so they need to figure out how to give $45 million away. Guess what their issue is? They already know they're giving the money away, and they're doing it for the kingdom, right? Guess what their issue is? They're concerned that if they give that $45 million to one organization and that organization changes the way that it sees the world and starts developing, different ways to engage with the world, they're concerned that, hey, Maybe this organization I gave money to that was feeding children, all of a sudden, 10 years from now, after I'm dead, they're funding the next war. I don't know how that could happen, but it's a problem, right? I'm not saying organizations do that, but the point is organizations change. So they've got to figure out a way to diversify their portfolio of giving. How are we going to give to a bunch of organizations, and who's going to monitor that, and who's going to maintain that? Who's going to make sure all that happens? Do we got to pay somebody? I don't know. I just know I don't want to give all this money to one organization. Is there a solution? Can we vet out a bunch of organizations to give to and manage that risk? That's a problem that wealthy people face, and we have a solution for that.
Along those lines, one of the things that I notice is there's a big difference in just writing out a check and giving the money, and then you don't see it again, and it goes to an organization. You're hoping that they're going to use it for good works, right? And for your intentions. But it's not the same as having the experience of being part of the giving. And I've even had clients that give and they don't get the deductions because they want to be part of the giving process, and they didn't think they could do that with an organization. So one of the things that we try to do in our planning is we want to match up the experience of giving with the donor. We want to make sure that, you're not just, if you want to be part of the giving process, we want you to have the opportunity to have that experience. And the experience of giving is actually, in my opinion, it's something that then perpetuates more giving, because, it brings fulfillment. And the more that you can integrate your family into it, it can really turn into a legacy that can help even change behavior over generations, right? And help them to become the types of individuals that you would want them to be, because now you're not just leaving money or assets, you're leaving purpose. And I think there's something powerful in that. And Brian, I'm sure you've seen that as well. And often also from the organizational perspective, the charities that are receiving the money, but are they usually open to wanting to collaborate and have the donors be part of the giving process as well?
Oh, they do. Some of them have really, I say often that one of the things we don't do enough, our society, is say thank you. So some charities take it upon themselves to go out of their way to thank their donors and bring them in. This is what we've done with what you've helped us with. You're giving us this money. This is who we've helped. This is what we've done. This is what we plan on doing next time. And it keeps it coming. And for the multi-generational thing, it's happened about 12 years ago, and it still makes me a little emotional. But one Christmas, my daughters, who are now 22 and 17, every year you get all these catalogs in the mail, and we got one from World Vision, which we still get from World Vision, and they were looking through them. And they came to my wife and I, and they said, so instead of getting presents this year, can we give $100 and get a goat and a couple of chickens for this village? And I almost cried. I said, you know what? We can do both. You can get your gifts and we can do this. So I knew that my wife and I set a good example for our daughters, because, and I got my giving spirit from going to church as a youngster. That's where it started. So, and I'm happy I've passed it on to my kids.
I have a client of mine that you made me remember this story. There's an organization, it's a camp for special needs children. And somebody had told her about it, and she was interested in giving some money, and she did, and that was fine. But a year later, they invited her to come to the camp, and she came and she saw the children and the joy on their faces as they're, riding on these horses and being able to, just have space that they can play with each other, because oftentimes, special needs children don't get the opportunity to interact with people similar to themselves on just kind of a free sort of basis. And the types of activities that they were doing, and the care and the love that the staff had, and leaving that experience, she wrote out a check 10 times bigger than the first one. And the reason was because, again, she had felt the effects of what her gift had done, and she wanted to do more.
Yeah, it's so important. So my organization that I started in Iraq, Orphans of War, we I really struggled to connect the people that my large donors and even my smaller donors with the mission on the ground, right? So I could send pictures, I could send story, but it's so much more impactful if the donors are engaged in what's happening. And so what we decided to do here is for most of the donors were in my local city where I live in Gig Harbor. And what we decided to do is we decided to put on an ethnic dinner. So we would invite 500 of our donors, and we would put on an authentic Iraqi dinner. So I met some Iraqis here in the local area. We brought them in. They'd make traditional Iraqi bread and hummus, and they would do tabbouleh, and they would make all their traditional food, baba ganoush and everything, just lovely. And I brought in 40 or 50 serving staff. And we had like this dance as we were serving. We had it decorated like Iraq. And it was just an experience that I wanted the people to have to understand how much what they're doing is affecting the people in Iraq. So I get up there and speak. But one of the things I wanted them to understand is that the Iraqi culture is so unique. It's amazing how these people are so hospitable. And I wanted to show them some of that hospitality. I got to spend a lot of time breaking bread with really cool people overseas and helping orphans out. And I just wanted them to get a taste of what I was able to taste. And I knew how important that was. So what you're saying, Glenn, is so important. It's not just giving of the money, but it's engaging in what you're giving to. It's being a part of it. It's so important. And like you said, it gives you purpose. From a scientific perspective, when you have purpose in your life, you have alignment between your head and your heart. And one of the hardest things for people to do is align what's going on in their head with what's going on in their heart. And if you can manage to find that alignment between head and heart and get onto a purpose, what we sometimes say in religious terms, a calling, right? If you can align those things together, then you can have purpose, which brings joy and happiness, and not just for you, but potentially all the people you're touching and your family. That's why we do this work. It's at the pointy end of the spear of what's so important in the lives of people. People suffering right now need to give of themselves, need to give their money and their time and their talents, pour into something else. It's so important for healing too, in the lives of broken people.
I think, when you mention broken people, the spirit of giving is something that can help heal, broken hearts. And my wife and I lost a baby a few years back. And as hard as that was, there are situations that are even worse that, you can't even imagine what people go through. I have a client of mine who was basically the victim of a hit and run. And they were on a walk with their young little daughter. Her husband, herself, and their toddler were all hit in the crash.
Wow.
He survived. Her husband's paralyzed, probably permanently with brain, injury and damage and so on. And their daughter passed away. And so she wakes up in the hospital wondering what happened. And the only thing that could help her get out of that hole of depression and everything else that she was going through was the idea that maybe she could help others that had gone through the same type of traumatic event. She didn't have anybody who came to her hospital room and was kind of that caring hand and listening ear, and she wanted to be that person for others. And so we helped her form her foundation, and we helped her form her foundation, and then she's since started growing it and gotten a donor base, and they're having events, and now she has excitement because she's has a cause that she's really promoting on a large scale and doing good out there. And so I believe in the power of healing through being part of the giving process as well and helping others.
Well, and I don't always like to share the most personal parts of my story because oftentimes I'll end up crying. But the one thing that that I witnessed in Iraq was the devastation and just how much pain was being caused as a result of this war. Children dead, women dead. I mean, everything you can imagine. And I was experiencing that. And I think I was sustained in my ability to continue to stay in that place for 5 years. Really, it was because I was serving and I was helping and I was doing something about the crisis. Serving orphans and widows exposed me to much more trauma than I think I would have even experienced as a soldier when I went over there, because I saw some things that haunt me. But the reality is I was sustained because I was giving and I was pouring of myself into that very difficult and hard situation. It is the thing that sustains us. It is the thing that helps us survive extreme trauma, and that is to give of our hearts to others. It sounds counterintuitive. You want to just take in as much help as you can get. But when you pour your life out for other people, you heal much more rapidly. Such an important distinction of what it's like to give of self rather than expect. I don't want to turn this into a sermon, but that's really important, what we just talked about.
And I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. It makes me feel good. So there are 3 or 4 instances where I can look back and say, I am immensely proud of myself for accomplishing this. And they all involve doing something for someone else or a group of people. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say, Glenn, you've got a very successful firm, right? Nationwide presence, nationwide footprint. And I've got to tell you, and I said this to you already, one of the most important relationships that Brian and I are building is with you and your organization. And this talk right now, this conversation has really solidified that in my mind, that this is the right direction for us in our partnership and in our relationship. And I'm really excited about what InterVivos is doing and building out this part of your brand, this charitable planning piece of it. I'm really proud of you for taking it on, because it can be risky, but we're going to do this, man. We're going to charge up the hill and do it.
Definitely. So to wrap up, Brian, if you were talking to a donor or a family that was kind of maybe on the fence about whether it made sense for them to pursue planned giving or even think about it or not, what would you tell them?
Well, I don't know if I'd tell them anything. I would ask them what's important to them. And what is it? So something that I ask all my clients is, a year from now, we're patting ourselves on the back about how great a job we did working together. And they nod, yeah, and smile. I said, well, what did we accomplish? And sometimes they know, and sometimes they don't. And then I have a client who is giving a bunch of money to dog shelters because he figured out that's the only thing he really cares about is animals. So he's got like 5 different dog shelters he's giving a bunch of money to. And that came about through just me asking the next question. So I would probably ask more than I would tell. I would dig a little deeper to see what was important to them, because something is. Because people are not passionate about their money. Well, some of them probably are, but people are passionate about other stuff, things that are important to them. The family farm, the heirloom, the business has been in the family for generations. That's where the emotional connection is. It's not to the money. The money is a means to an end. So for me, that's the goal, to figure out what's important, because then I can help. I can't help them if I just assume something that's not true. So
I have a client of mine who became the trustee over a special needs trust for an individual who was an adult. The parents had passed away, and she had taken care of all the administrative aspects of the properties and the income, assets, everything that needed to be handled. So she comes into my office and she says, everything's done. I don't have to worry about anything else. It's all under control. What do I do now? And I said, now you find the best way to give him the best life that he can live. And you enjoy yourself, enjoy the journey. And what I find is that when we sit down with clients and help them with this type of planning, it can really change your everyday life and give you tremendous purpose if you go about it the right way.
Yes. And I recently I got a referral from a client for her best friend. And we're doing Zoom because we, couldn't be in the same room. And after about 20 minutes, I said, just based on the questions I was asking, I said, so the most important thing to you is making sure your son's taken care of. Because she's got an adult son with special needs. And she said, yes. And I said, okay, so we can move on from there. And she said, how do you know that? We've only talked for 20 minutes. I've worked with these other people for 10 years. And I have to keep reminding them that. How do you know that? Right. I don't know. You have to ask them why they don't know that. I asked the questions to find out what's important to you. And that was the most important thing there. And everybody's got that thing. You just got to find out you have to care enough to find out what it is, basically.
Yeah. Well,
Any thoughts, John?
yeah, on this subject, I mean, we're talking about trying to find the nugget, right? What do you care about? And what surprises me oftentimes is that the client has forgotten what it is they care about. They don't remember because they get lost in the day-to-day. Yeah, I got to pay bills over here. Oh, my health is compromised because of A, so I'm just focused on my health right now. I'm focused on this. And we have to ask them really clever questions to help them find the nugget of their life purpose again. Oftentimes when people are growing up as children, they have sort of a vision of what their life can be, what they want to become, who they are, what their identity is. And then they just get lost in the day-to-day. So we have to be good at helping clients re-recognize what it is that's important to them, what has always been important to them since they were a child, what they really care about. Because oftentimes we forget it. We get lost in the day-to-day. So the question why, you can get down to that nugget again, but two things have to happen. We have to be very patient with our clients. We have to be very patient with them and let them work through this process. But number two, we need to ask our clients to be patient with us. All right, we have to be courageous as we attempt to discover this why, because oftentimes it's layers of stuff that have to come up to get to that nugget of why, what is the purpose? What is my purpose? What do I want? What do I want for my children? What do I want for my family? So that's really the most important piece of this work. And frankly, the part that I enjoy the most. Nobody's shooting at me. It could be a little bit awkward and emotional, but nobody's shooting at me, so I could deal with it.
Brian, any final thoughts?
Oh, tons, but not enough time to go through them all. So I think this was a very good conversation, a very important conversation that we needed to start this relationship. I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Perfect. Well, it's great to rub shoulders with people who have the right intentions and want to perpetuate good in the world. And to be honest, the more of us that there are out there that can help set people on the track of giving, of making a difference, of being more than just, in the rat race, right? And having purpose and living with purpose and having businesses with purpose. I think
there are more of those people than you think. I think they're out there. I think we need to come together and remind ourselves. There was a LinkedIn post recently. My first two kids are adopted. The last one surprised us after being married 12 years. But we were adopting our first kid. I met this woman, and she did respite care for foster families. Twice a month, she would take these kids to her house to give the foster family a break. And she said they don't know how stressful it is to do this until they get that first break, and they're not in the middle of it raising someone else's kid. And why do you do this? And her answer stunned me. I will never forget. She said, well, I can't do a lot, but this is something I can do. So I do what I can. And people hear me say a lot. Everybody should do what they can. And that's where that came from. Because before we were able to adopt, we had to go through the foster program, and I never intended to give them back, but still, you're in the interim, you're raising someone else's kid. And that is stressful, especially if you're eventually going to have to give them back. So this woman did something she thought was a very small thing, but it wasn't small for those families. It was a big thing for them. So.
Well, thanks for spending this time, and we'll definitely do the conversation.